on YouTube. So it's great to have you here. We're streaming from 2 different places, so I'll just say that first, because if I'm looking back and forth a little bit, that's why. So I'm really happy to have you here. If you've been participating in the goal setting workshop over the last 5 days, you've done a lot of hard work. Hopefully you're also excited about your future and what might be coming up in the next year, and feeling some degree of confidence that you can really move forward. I know we have some questions, and one of the big questions that I've seen is, if I want to improve my confidence, how do I apply this? So that's really what I'm going to be focusing on in the webinar today, is when you have inevitable setbacks, because they will come no matter how solid you're feeling in your plan and your motivation for going forward now, there's definitely going to be setbacks. Things can happen like, your instructor moves and moves out of town. Something happens to your horse and you're not able to ride for a while, or you have a fall. And I know some of you, that's been the case, that you've had an accident and it's really knocked down your confidence, and now you're trying to rebuild. So you can absolutely use the strategies and the framework in this goal setting workshop to rebuild your confidence. And I have an opportunity and some resources that I'll tell you more about at the end of this call as well. So if you don't know me, I'm Callie, and I've been the host of your goal setting workshop. I'm a trainer and a riding instructor. I have a farm here in Pennsylvania, and I've always felt like it was not only my opportunity, but also my responsibility to my students to understand more about the learning process than just riding. So riding how-to is really just a small part of what learning is. When we tackle something like learning to ride, the skills, that how do you sit in the saddle, how do you use your aids, how do you communicate with the horse, obviously that's a big part of it, but it's not all of it. Because in order for us to keep doing something and to find success at anything, there's that underlying layer of, how do we consistently take the action in order to build those skills? When we do have setbacks or we do have confidence problems, how do we handle that? How do we move forward through that? And I've felt that it's, again, as an instructor, it's part of my responsibility to be able to help you with that. So that's why we're here. And I've started publishing online courses and videos in order to first serve just the students that I was working with in person, and then to work with a bigger group of people from around the world. And we have an amazing community here. If you're part of the Facebook group, you know that we've got people from all over the world that are like-minded in wanting to do the best that we can for our horses, wanting to be open-minded and learn. And I'm just honored to be here and be part of this process with all of you. So what we're going to be doing in today's session is we're going to be talking about setbacks, how to plan for these setbacks so that when they do come, first you can kind of see what's going on. You can understand that, okay, this is just going to be one of those times where it's going to feel like 1 step forward and 2 steps back. And you have the resources that you know how to keep yourself going through it. So that the setback, instead of completely derailing your plans, it's just a little bump in the road, and it might actually even be an opportunity for greater learning. The other thing we're going to do is dive into confidence. We're going to talk about what creates confidence and how you can build your confidence in little increments. There's 3 main components to building confidence, and you have to think about progressing in all 3 of these areas to really be able to move forward and build your confidence. And then I'll tell you more about the opportunity that we have if you want to continue being a part of this community. If you want my help with your riding moving forward, there's a way that we do that through the online course, that we can do that virtually, and I would love to have you be a part of that with me. So first of all, I'm just going to jump into the chat for just a moment. If you have questions as we go through this, please feel free to put them in the comments at any time, no matter where you're watching. If you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on our live page, or even if you've just jumped on and you're watching on YouTube, put your questions in. The questions that I'm going to be covering today will be related to more of what we've been talking about with goal setting, with confidence, with more of this, again, this kind of underlying, we could say, kind of mindset of riding, And these types of questions, I'm not going to go over many of the how-to riding questions in today's webinar. There'll be other opportunities for that. This one's focused on goals and confidence. So it looks like we have a really good group on. We've got Leah from Alberta, from England, Minnesota, Annabelle from the Netherlands, Scotland, West Yorkshire. It's always fun to see where everyone is tuning into. Ohio, PA, Southern California. Awesome. And Cinnamon, I see your question here as well about riding in snow, riding in bad weather, and becoming better at rehabbing horses. These are actually really good questions because a lot of us are in the same situation right now. There's a lot of us that I know are in colder climates and haven't been able to do as much riding, or sometimes even just other reasons that we can't ride. Horse has a layup, we have an injury. So it's really good to plan for what you can do in those times, and we'll share some of that as we get going here. All right, so I am going to go ahead and just jump right in to first doing a quick recap of our goal setting process. So I'm going to grab the journal here. This goal setting process actually comes from the Balanced Riding Course and Training Journals, which are two programs that go hand in hand. And the goal setting process is the beginning of this journal. So what we started with first was just dreaming big. I had asked you to do an exercise where you just take a moment, you kind of get quiet, and you think about, why did you start riding? What was it that really initially pulled you towards horses? Whether it was when you were younger, or whether it's something you've started more recently, like what is it that you love the most about horses, and what keeps you coming back? Because this isn't easy. It's not an easy activity, mentally or physically. It's not an inexpensive activity. So if we're here and we're riding, and the fact that you're even here and you're taking this further by wanting to really like do the best that you can, you have a strong reason, a strong pull of what you love about horses. So the first day was really about connecting to that, and then just letting yourself dream. Like, what would you love to do? What would be super fun to accomplish? And this is a process that I want you to keep coming back to. The reason that we're reviewing it here is there's certain pieces of this that are going to be really helpful when you do hit those setbacks. And this is actually one of them. This first day is this idea of connecting to why you're doing something. So there's a little saying that we should use times of motivation to plan out actions. So meaning a time like this, first of all, it's a time of year, it's the new year, it's a time where a lot of times we're reflecting and we're planning. And right now, as you're in this process and you've just gone through those days and hopefully you're feeling excited, you want to use this time to really make sure that you like put these things down on paper, make a resource for yourself so that when you hit times where you're feeling frustrated, you can literally pull this back out and look at it, and it'll help to put you in the same place that you're feeling right now. More of this feeling of excitement and reconnecting to why you're doing this in the first place so that you can kind of reignite the motivation in order to go forward. One of the things that I think is really important in terms of making the difference between success or not having success, no matter how you define that with riding, is that we don't want to rely just on willpower. Meaning we don't want to think that we're just going to will ourselves to get to the barn X number of days or to make it to the lesson. You want to set yourself up so that you're being smarter in terms of not just thinking that you can will yourself to do something, but really setting yourself up that, for one, you'll be pulled to do it because you keep reconnecting with why you started and what you love about it. And then you have those other little pieces in place that were the other days of the workshop. So in the second part, we did the wheel exercise. So the wheel exercise was where we went through and basically figured out where you are right now, kind of rating yourself on your level of competency or your level of skill or expertise in these different sections. First, it was the different parts of horsemanship, your skill or fitness as a rider, equipment, and then different pieces of the horse's health. And a reminder that it's not about having to be an expert in each of these areas, but it's knowing enough and feeling comfortable enough that you can recognize an expert so that you're getting the good help that you need with your horse. Or if you're riding in a lesson barn, you're recognizing a place that's really doing things well so that you know that they're going to set you up with a good foundation and also a safe foundation. When you're starting out and you're really putting your trust in someone as a riding instructor to make decisions that are going to keep you safe, it's a balance. You have to go into that with enough of your own confidence and knowledge to feel that you can recognize someone that you can trust to make those decisions. You don't want to just blindly trust someone. You always want to keep kind of your inner guidance on. And you want to educate yourself enough that you can really choose someone that's good and feel comfortable trusting them. So in the second part of the day 2 exercise, we went into the different pieces of being a good rider. So we went into having enough time to put into practice, finances, because riding and horses, they cost money, the relationship with the horse, your level of fitness, all those different pieces. And then we broke that down as we went through the different days, selecting one that felt like it was the most important one, that if you could improve in just one area, it would help just by improving in that area, bringing all of the other ones up. And then in the third day, we went through and we really clarified your goal. So this is the part where we took something that maybe was more just broad. So for example, building confidence, and we went to make that much more clear. So if you just say, I want to increase my confidence, how do you measure that? How can you know that you've progressed? There's a really easy trap to fall into with confidence in saying that you want to increase your confidence. But if you keep moving forward in your skills and you're always working at the edge of your skill level, which is a good place to be for growth, you're always maybe feeling a little bit nervous. Or if you're going too far and you're working outside of your skill level where it's no longer safe, and then you're feeling more than just that little bit of discomfort that can come with growth, but you're actually feeling anxiety and fear, and you're always in that place, you might not realize that 6 months ago, you were only walking and trotting and you were feeling really nervous. Now, you could still say, I'm feeling nervous, but now you're going around and you're starting to jump little courses, or you're cantering, or you're now comfortable or able to go out on a trail ride. So what you want to do if building your confidence is a goal for you is to think about how can you make that something that's really clear, saying like, I want to be able to walk and trot around the arena 2 times each direction and stay below a 4 in terms of my level of anxiety. I want to kind of give it a numeral scale, describe what it feels like in your body. I want to feel like I can still sense the horse and my body can feel soft. I don't want to have that, that clenched feeling. I want to feel my shoulders loose and I want to feel nice and light through my body. So that way, if in a month from now you're doing that, you can realize that, wow, I've actually made that progress. Sure, I still get nervous when I try to canter or when I go outside the arena, but that's because that's on the edge of my skill level. But here at the walk and the trot, where I used to get really nervous, now I'm actually comfortable. So then you can start to make that differentiation between what is growth, like what's the growth of your skills, and what is just kind of that mental thing that we go through. So I would really encourage you, if confidence is something that you want to improve, get really clear. You don't want to just say, I want to improve my confidence. Instead, you want to make that more clear. I want to feel good. I want to feel relaxed when I'm riding the rising trot. I want to feel relaxed and feel confident asking for the canter transition. So really make that a lot more clear. It's a really important step for this one. The next part, we went through and we did identifying your story. And this was the piece that I'll explain in a moment when I go through the science of change and kind of the science that backs up this process that we went through. This one often gets skipped, but it's really important because if you don't have your story, if you don't recognize and be honest with yourself in the different things that you tend to say in our self-talk, then it is going to really, when you hit those setbacks and you have the stumbling blocks, that's when these things are going to come up and they're going to really hold you back. So going through, identifying the story that you currently tell yourself, and then finding the new stories and the new self-talk that is both true and positive. So this is deeper again than just positive affirmations. This is actually saying what is true. So again, with the example of confidence and wanting to increase your confidence, instead of just flipping it around and saying and giving yourself an affirmation of I'm a confident rider, what's a statement that could really ring true for you? Maybe it could be something like, each time that I go to the barn, I am learning something new and I'm creating new experiences for myself. That's something that is true, but it's positive, but it's going to ring more true to you. So it's going to be more effective than just saying I'm a confident rider if you don't truly feel that. So I hope that that difference is clear, and you might want to even take a look back at this section and made sure that you kind of wrote this in a way that made that clear difference. So we have one more in here, and then I'll take a moment. I'm going to go through the comments and the chat and see if there's any pieces in here that I can help you with if you've had questions along this process. So finally, in day 5, we went through and we created new habits. So if who we are and what we do is the sum of our habits, then this is also a really important part, because first we went through and we chose the focus area. And then you went through and you made a list of all the different things that you could do to improve in that area. So let's again using confidence. By the time you're at this point, you want to have something that is, again, a little more clear. So your big focus area is I want to improve my confidence. Let's say your more clear specified goal is something like I want to be able to canter both ways around the arena and stay below a 4 in my level of anxiety, feel comfortable doing it. So then activities that you could do to improve would be things like maybe spending more time changing speeds at the trot. Can you do a faster trot and still stay comfortable? Can you ask your horse to slow down? Can you do a sitting trot and stay comfortable? Can you do unmounted exercises on, say, an exercise ball, practicing the canter and stay comfortable with that? This is where it's going to get specific for you. If maybe you struggle with balance at the canter because your horse has a lower level of training, he tends to go really fast and unbalanced, then it might be things like spend more time working on canter transitions with my horse on the lunge line, do in-hand work with my horse, so do balancing exercises for the horse, further the training of my horse, have someone else ride my horse with and practice the canter once a week. So it's going to be different for everybody, but these are the kinds of ideas that you brought up here. And then it's, again, asking that question is, if there's just one thing that you could do that would feel most important, what would it be? That's going to be your habit. And then you want to make that habit really simple. So this is where, again, when we're talking about confidence, we're looking for what is kind of the edge of your comfort zone. So using this example of the canter transition, if you find that you are pretty comfortable at walk and most of the time at trot, but when you start doing a little bit more at trot, like you start working at a faster trot or you start preparing your horse for the canter transitions, that's when that anxiety starts to come up. Then you can use that as, think about it as like the edge of your comfort zone. So that's the edge. The canter transition is out of the comfort zone. The edge is right as you're just preparing the trot. You're starting to think about the canter. So then it's, how could you spend more time right in that area? How could you do more, again, transitions going from a bigger trot to a slower trot? How could you think about asking for canter, but not actually worry about picking it up? So let me explain that a little further. It's something that I do with a lot of my students when I'm teaching it, is we'll have an exercise. So let's say I have 2 or 3 riders in a group and I have them going around the arena And we have one long side of the arena that we're going to canter in. So I say, ask for the canter at this corner, canter up to that corner, and come back to trot. But the goal is not focusing on the canter. Instead, it's focusing on maintaining the balance. So it doesn't actually matter if you canter the long side. The goal is that you maintain the balance. So what that leads into is then the riders, as they come into that corner where we've decided to ask for canter, they're setting up to ask for canter, but their goal, the kind of, to use some behavior speak, the criteria is that they have to maintain the balance of them and their horse. So if the horse starts to rush, we slow down. If they start to bounce all over the place, we reorganize. When we reorganize, then we ask again. So what inevitably happens, it's usually will take a few lessons that they might not get the canter, but when it does actually happen, it's really nice and balanced. And there's been so much time working on that edge where we're not just cantering around and kind of flinging ourselves into, out of the comfort zone. We're working on right on the edge that by the time the canter actually happens, it's much less of an issue. And then all of a sudden, our edge has moved. Now the transition is part of the comfort zone, and maybe maintaining the canter around the next corner is the next edge. And then we start working on that. So no matter where your comfort zone is, whether it's lower and you find that even just mounting up and walking around brings up those feelings, maybe the edge is at the mounting block. Can you spend more time just getting on and off? If it's higher, let's say maybe your edge is when you're out on the trail and your horse starts to kind of get escalated because he's something's going on, or he's more distracted, something happens and he's getting escalated. Think about the edge there and how could you work on that edge? Maybe you go out with a friend on the trail. Maybe you do more shorter rides so you get more comfortable being out. You go someplace where it might get your horse a little bit worried, but not too far that you can't handle it. So it's if you can think about the different principles that we talk about, there's many different ways and scenarios that you can then apply those in. All right, so and the last part was in going through and keeping track of when you actually do that new habit. And I'll explain in a moment why that is usually the easiest thing for us to do. It's the easiest, and it's not that it's an unimportant part, but it's just the one that most people do and they skip the other steps. But before we go into that, let me just take a look at your comments, see if we have any questions in. And we've got, again, people from all over. So thresholds, yes, that is kind of another term for that idea of the comfort zone. You can think about threshold just being another word for where your comfort zone is. A question from Cheryl. After taking hunter and jumper riding lessons on farm horses for many years and life events, career and kids seem to consume your time. Is it too late to plunge into getting your own horse? I feel like I've so much to learn beyond riding and that boarders will know I don't have experience in ownership. I would say no. And actually, I would ask for everyone that's here, whether you're on Facebook or whether you're watching on the live page, leave a comment if you've been in this situation and if you now own a horse. And Cheryl, I think you'll find that there's a lot of people that are getting their first horse later. And it is definitely, it's a learning curve for everybody. But the rewards are well worth it. The key is to take the time to really get a horse that is a good fit and is appropriate for where you're at. You probably don't want to get a young thoroughbred off the track thinking that you're going to, retrain him. For some people, that's appropriate. For most, for the first horse, you want a horse that is older, that is nice and steady, nice and quiet, that you can really enjoy and be safe with. And Rebecca says another good question. When your horse is talented but incredibly difficult, how do you progress as you learn together without losing your drive and focus? Yeah, this is a really good one. So this, I would say, is about setting expectations that are appropriate for the individual horse. So I do quite a bit of training here. I used to do even more than I do currently. And it depends so much on the horse, how quickly they're going to progress. Some horses will progress through training really, really quickly. And some horses, it's going to take longer. It depends on their personality. It depends on their past experiences, how much they've done. So this is a great question because it ties into this idea of when you hit the setback, when something happens that maybe you have just a really frustrating, difficult ride, what I would do is first, like when you feel that frustration coming up and like wondering, should I keep going? Should I get rid of this horse, get somebody easier? Go back and think first about the why. Why did you choose this horse? What are you excited about getting to? What is, what was your reason? Why did you pick this horse? And if you reconnect to that, and then you go back to, what is the simple things that are going to move you forward? If you maybe set those too high, can you break them down to even just a little bit less, a little bit lower expectation for right now, so that you can get back into that feeling of success and forward momentum, and then you can grow again from there. There's definitely always times where a horse will seem to be doing really good, and then sometimes something happens and you just have a ride that doesn't go so well. And that's honestly it's all part of the process. If you're part of training journals and you watch the videos there, you'll find there's often where I come in and I say, this is what I want to work on today. And then something happens that I end up working on something completely different. Right, Amanda, good question about confidence here. I'm a very experienced rider, but also high anxiety with confidence issues. How do I manage to balance these two things, especially when this affects my horses? I'm going to talk about the 3 different pieces of confidence, Amanda, in the next section that we're going to get into. And I think that will be really helpful. So I won't fully answer your question here because there's a piece of confidence that doesn't really have necessarily anything to do with your level of skill. And it's sometimes the most frustrating one because it's like, you can do it, but it just doesn't feel comfortable to you. And there can be an underlying reason for that. So again, I'm not fully answering the question here because we'll get into it when I lay out a little more of the framework in a minute. And let's see, I'll do one more question here, and then I'll get back to, we're going to talk about the kind of the science of change. So this next question, what can I do when I start losing my confidence or feeling anxious while riding out? How do I reset my mindset? The first thing is to catch yourself early. So it's great that you've asked this question because you're obviously noticing when you start to get a little bit elevated. The earlier you can catch it, the better you'll be able to use kind of self-calming strategies. If we get too far on kind of this continuum of anxiety, then it becomes really hard for us to self-regulate. So the first key is to really get to know yourself in terms of what are the little signs that come up first for you when you start to get anxious? Do you feel your stomach clenching? Do you hold your breath? Do your shoulders hunch up? What are some little things that you can notice about yourself that give you a little clue of, I'm starting to not feel right here. And then when you're still in that early stage, you can ask yourself, is the situation safe? Is this feeling truly a warning sign that something is not right? I'm riding above my skill level. My horse is really distracted. He's not acting right. Something's going to happen. Be honest with yourself there. Safety is, I think, the most important thing. And safety is part of confidence because it helps to build good experiences. So there are times where we need to just dismount, or we need to go back to the arena, or we need to take a step to keep ourselves safe. So that said, the most important thing you can do if you catch yourself, you recognize that, yes, this is something that I can handle. The next thing to do is to start taking deep breaths in a specific way. So breathing is one of the most simple things that we can do to self-regulate, to slow down our heart rate, to basically slow down our system, and to help keep us in a good state of mind. So even if you do catch yourself and you realize that the situation isn't very safe and you're going to need to change something, you still want to use this so that you can do what you need to do, dismount, and get your horse back to the barn, or whatever it takes to keep yourself safe, or if you're going to keep riding through. So when you breathe, in order to breathe in the most calming way possible, you want to breathe where your belly is going out as you inhale. And really try this as you're listening, because many people kind of hear this and they say, okay, yeah, that makes sense, breathe. But the way that you breathe will make a big difference. If you take a deep breath coming up this way, it has a very different effect on your body. You're breathing into a different part of your lungs. You're actually not able to bring in as much oxygen, and you're raising your center of gravity. If instead you breathe where you fill out your belly and you fill out the lower part of your lungs as you inhale, then as you do it, it's going to lower your center of gravity. It's going to give you a deeper, fuller breath, and it's going to allow you to breathe more slowly. So you inhale slowly, fill up the lower part of your lungs, let your belly go out. And then as you exhale and you push the air back out, then you want to think about, you let your belly come in, and that's what pushes the air out. The technical term for this is lower diaphragmatic breathing, but it's very calming. So it's just low, slow, deep breaths is the best thing to do. Practice your breathing outside of stressful situations. The more that you practice it, that it's just natural to take this deep breath into your belly, the easier you'll be able to access it when you are actually in a stressful situation. Okay, so I am going to come over here to the sheet that I have set up. I'm sorry, those of you on Facebook, and it might not be super clear, but I'm going to describe each part of this. So there is a science to change. This 8 steps of change is, these particular 8 steps came from the book, The Power of Story. The author is Jim Lear. And the theme of these 8 steps are basically present in all of the research that I've seen on what truly creates change in people. Why this is important to understand is most of the time when we want to change something, we go right down to the bottom 2 and we skip all these other pieces. So as you're going forward, if you can understand this framework, it's going to be an extra reminder for you to go back and do the first parts, review the why, review the stories that you're telling yourself, because that's what's actually going to move you through the setbacks. So the first thing that we do is we need to define why we're doing something. What is the purpose for doing it? Why did we start in the first place? That's what we did in day 1 of our workshop. The second thing is to figure out, where are we right now? It's just being honest with, this is why I'm doing this. This is what I want to do, but where am I actually at? This was part 2. This was that wheel workshop. The next thing was just making a decision of, you know what, I'm going to go for this. I'm going to keep going through the goal setting workshop. I'm going to apply myself. I want to learn this. I want to do this. That's the third part. You've actually been going through pieces of this through your whole riding experience. You decided that you'd love to learn how to ride, and then you realized that you need to take lessons, and you decide to go out and find a riding barn. The next piece, and this was our day 4, was the old stories and the old self-talk that you're using. So this is again that hard part, because it requires being really honest with yourself, but it's so important of figuring out, what are the stories that I'm telling myself, and how are they affecting me? And this piece of how are they affecting me is down here. This is experience the old stories. So this is be honest with yourself on what you've been saying, and then how has that been affecting you in a negative way? And then the 6th step is coming up with that new story. So again, we went over this when we did the review, and you're going to want to keep coming back to this. This isn't something that you do once and that it just is going to stick with you forever. As you have setbacks, come back to this process and really focus on this first part. Don't focus so much on okay, I got to get to the barn again. Instead, take a time, 20 minutes out of your day, and go through and remind yourself, why am I doing this? What kind of stories have I been telling myself? What is the truth about it? How can I focus on that to be more positive? And then you get into planning what you're going to do. Okay, I've had this setback. I've had this fall, and I feel like my confidence has taken a big blow, but I still really want to ride. I love that feeling of freedom when I'm on the horse. I love that connectedness with the horse, and I don't want this to hold me back. But I've had the setback, and I'm going to need to work through it. So then you think about the story that you're telling yourself now is, I must be a terrible rider. I'm never going to get this. I was too old to try this in the first place. This is silly. I should probably just stop. If you continue along that, you might give up riding. If you don't make a change from what you were doing before, maybe you could have an accident that is worse. But then you go to, what's the truth in the situation? Well, the truth was that it was actually a pretty random thing. I was walking along and I wasn't really paying attention, and my horse spooked, and I kind of just rolled off the side. And the truth is that now that I've had this experience, I'm going to be much more aware of where my horse's attention is. Now that I've had this experience, I realize that I stayed on for the first 10 seconds of this. So my balance was pretty good in those first 10 seconds. Or you could go, the truth is that my horse behaved really well, because when I came off, they just stopped right away. Or you could go into, the truth is that I fell, but I actually didn't get hurt. I was okay. Or, you know what, I had this accident and I did get hurt, but now I know that I'm going to pay more attention to where my level of skill is, and I'm going to take better care of myself and not pushing myself that hard and going past my comfort zone so far. So you can see where, no matter what the situation is, you can find a story in there that is true and that's positive, and that's what you want to do for this piece. And then your plan is, well, I need to get out and I need to just start sitting on my horse 3 days a week. Even if I just sit there and maybe walk around for a few steps, that's going to get me back in the saddle, and that's going to start to build my confidence again. So that's your planning piece. That's what you do next. And then you keep the log. And this is where you start to actually, have your planner. This is a great one for this. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the planner in a minute here. But have your log, however you want to keep it, and just be checking off when you've actually done that habit that you wanted to create, when you've done the thing that you set out to do. And that's the final step. So most people, they have the setback and they just go right into, well, I should sign up for this clinic, or I should just get to the barn an extra day. But the problem is that usually doesn't last. That's only going to last maybe a few weeks or a month, and then you're going to be right back to where you were. But when you can go and you can dig into this deeper stuff, it's going to set you up to be able to be much more consistent and really move forward a lot further. So earlier I said I was going to talk a little more about confidence, and there's 3 pieces to increasing confidence. The first one is knowledge, the second one is skills, and the third one is experience. And I should particularly put good experience. So with anything that we do in riding, as confidence increases, it usually increases as these 3 things are going up. So we start to learn more about what we're doing. And as we learn more, we feel more confident in ourselves, knowing that we're doing the right thing, we're on the right track. As we have skills and we're able to just accomplish more, and we're able to feel better when we're in the saddle and feel better in the different gaits, then our confidence starts to go up. But we also need to have this good experiences. because when we can have layers and layers of good experiences, our confidence goes up. What a good experience is funny because it's a little bit subjective. So an example was, I had a student one time that they'd been riding for, I think, about 3 months, and they had a fall. It was one of those things. No one really did anything wrong. They were learning the canter. They picked up the canter. They just got really unbalanced and steered their horse towards a jump and ended up coming off right over the jump. So she handled it in a great way because luckily she wasn't hurt. And she looked at it, instead of being a blow to her confidence that, oh my gosh, I've had this fall and I realize I can fall. Instead, she said, well, I had a fall. It wasn't that bad. Now I know what it feels like. And I actually feel better. My confidence is improved after the fall instead of going down. So many falls have the opposite effect, but it's just an example of, we all assign different meanings to things, and depending on the meaning that we assign has a huge impact on how it affects us. It's another reason that I've also had students that are excellent horse people. They're really experienced, they're excellent riders, but they have very little confidence. And usually that very little confidence is one of two things. It's either the story and the self-talk, that they kind of talk themselves down from recognizing the skill that they have, or it's poor experiences from a lot of times other instructors. So they're a great rider, but they were riding with someone that was constantly cutting them down, that in the learning environment would always focus on what they were doing wrong and never giving credit to all the things that they were doing really well. So even though they had lots of knowledge and lots of skill, because they had such a unfortunate big bank of riding just wasn't fun and it was a poor experience, they had much lower levels of confidence. So when you're thinking about increasing your confidence, you really want to go through all three of these and be looking to improve all three. All right, I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to jump back in to any questions that we have. And then I'm going to tell you about the opportunity that we have if you want to keep moving forward with the community, and also if you would like to work specifically on some of your riding skills. So Katerina, this question ties in really well to what we were just talking about with the confidence. If you're hacking out and you panic because your horse is too babyish and has not much confidence riding out on his own, do you recommend dismounting and walking, or never to dismount the horse? This depends completely on what the horse is actually acting like and your level of skill as a rider, as well as your level of confidence. I believe that the most important thing is to try to the best of your ability to keep each experience a good experience for yourself and for your horse. So if that means dismounting and walking back, that's the best thing to do. Probably if that happens, you want to kind of plan a little bit for the next time and pick something that is going to be less far out of the comfort zone for both you and your horse. Maybe it's going out with another horse. Maybe it's if you're going out alone, but you don't go as far. Maybe it's walking out with your horse. So, but in the situation, it is much better to keep yourself safe. And I absolutely do not subscribe to the rule that you can never dismount. It's much better for your safety and also for your confidence that if you need to get off, handle the situation. And then Yvonne, I bought my first horse 3 years ago. No experience of horse ownership. It's a big learning curve, but could not imagine life without her now. Constantly learning, and now back to basics with a lot of groundwork after a few scares going through gates when she would rush through. I want to achieve the lightest touch for a response in what I'm asking and have the consistency in being clear. Yvonne, this I think is one of the questions that is based on probably based on skill, your experience as skill as a handler, and then what you're asking your horse to do. And if you think about building skill and building training, whether it's for your horse or whether it's for you, we always want to start in little incremental steps and build up from there. So if you can think about even going through the gaits, what are the different pieces that you need to work through that? You need to be able to ask your horse to stop, maybe to back up, to be able to swing their hindquarters around. So you train each of those steps individually, and then you put them together, and then you put them together at the gate. It's really the same thing of like when we're talking about the idea of the canter, and you start with asking for the canter where you're just focusing on the balance and keeping the balance through the transition. And then you start to focus on maybe cantering the whole long side, then cantering around the corner and going from there. So it's really about breaking things down and working on each step at a time. And then, of course, there's more, there's so many layers of advice that can be in there for each one of the individual skills. And that's just part of the process of learning. And I think what makes it so enjoyable is there always is so many layers. Even to the most simple things, there's layers of how we can do them better and better. Okay, I'll take one more question here. Good comment from Leslie here. She said, goal setting for us and the horse. Are these separate, or should we find a goal that bridges the two? Really good. I always like to have, I always have multiple goals, but I like to have one that is my focus. So if you can think about the one that is going to be most important, meaning there's almost always like, if this thing becomes better, this thing's going to get easier. So if you're thinking about a goal for you and a goal for a horse, maybe a goal for you is I'm just going to come up with a random example. A goal for you could be that I want to maintain my balance better when I'm riding the canter, so that I can canter, a 20-meter circle and feel balanced and comfortable. And maybe the goal for the horse is I want the canter transitions to be smoother, and I want my horse to use themselves better in the canter transitions. Or I want, my horse to be able to canter from a walk. So those two are obviously really related. And then I would be looking at what's the one activity that's going to help both of you. And it might be doing something like practicing your transitions in the lower gaits, doing lots of walk to trot transitions, or doing transitions within the trot. So it's always, every situation is going to be so unique. Some of them are going to be very different, but I would try to find the common thread. And when you're thinking about your one most important habit, what is the one that seems like it could probably make all the others easier? Of course, you're probably going to have several habits that you're building, but the more that you can really be focused and have your priority, it'll make it so much simpler to really stay on track with that. All right, so I apologize that I'm not going to be able to get to everybody's question on the call today, but these are excellent questions here. Hopefully the frameworks that I'm sharing will help you think through this through your own situation. And what I want to tell you about next is the opportunity that we do have coming up. So the most popular program that we have here at CRK Training is the Balanced Riding course. It's the 8-week course that I teach. I typically teach it 2 times a year, and normally we don't open it until later in the year. But as we were planning this goal-setting workshop, I really felt like I wanted to be able to offer you a really solid plan and next step. So for those of you that had a skill that you're focusing on that is around the riding skills of posture, of using your aids, feeling the movement of the horse, improving your balance, those types of skills, or if you have a gait that you want to improve, or if you're working through a training challenge or problem with your horse, I wanted to be able to have something that would really support you beyond just the goal setting workshop, that would really support you going forward. So I decided to open up enrollment for the balanced riding course early this year and give you the opportunity to get started in it right away. So what I want to first do is just simply go through and give you an idea of who the balanced riding course is a good fit for and who it's not a good fit for. And then I'll tell you exactly what's included. And we also have a really special offer since we've just come out of the goal setting workshop, since it's the beginning of the new year. I teamed up with a friend of mine to create an extra bonus to the balanced riding course, that instead of just the course, you also get the support from truly an expert in goals and in balancing horses in life throughout the year. If you are already a balanced riding course member, then I actually have a special webinar that I'm doing next for you right after this. So if you hopped on here, you saw the Facebook Live and you're on, I'm glad that you're here. Tune back in for our next webinar at 3, because that one is specifically for you as a balanced riding course member. And I have some next steps that are going to be options for you if you're looking for kind of the next step. But for those of you that are interested in moving forward, let me tell you a little bit more about who this is a good fit for. So as I already mentioned, if you're focusing on something in your riding, you have returned to riding lately, or you are just starting out, or even if you're an experienced rider, but you feel like there's some things in your foundation that have been lacking, in the balanced riding course, we go through really step by step to build this foundation of the skills that you need and the exercises that you can practice to really create those skills. So if it's something like you really want to improve riding your rising trot, you want to work on the canter, you want to work on getting comfortable going out on trails, even if you want to be able to start building up to where you can do some low-level jumping. If you have a training problem that you're working through, the balanced riding course starts with focusing on horse behavior, giving you a foundation in behavior and in training, because training is really our communication with the horse. So a lot of the students in the balanced riding course, actually over half, don't own a horse. They take lessons at a riding school. But the pieces of behavior and training are just as important for them, because it helps them to understand how to communicate with the horse. And when we speak about our riding aids, it's really what it is. It's this communication that makes the riding aids effective, more than just putting your leg in the right spot. So then from there, we go into the foundational elements of riding the walk, riding the trot, doing transitions, improving the gaits, helping your horse with being more calm, everything from the really simple to catching a horse that might be difficult to catch in the field, all the way to working on something like a horse that is bucking, or that has started to do a little bit of rearing, or that's getting really like behind the leg and sucking back. In the balanced riding course program, I really look to incorporate the big picture. So from the wheel that was in the goal setting workshop, that day 2, we cover all of the areas of that. So if you went through that exercise and you're feeling like, you really could use some improvement in all, you picked your focus area and that's where you're going to concentrate, but that you could really, you want to learn more about all of those areas, the balanced riding course will help you do that. And it'll help you do it in a way where you have lifetime access to it. So there's no rush to go through. So you can focus on the area that you need to, and then you can expand from there, but you'll have all of the resources. So as you continue on through this year and beyond, you'll be able to focus on one specific area, go back, review these exercises, see where you need to focus next, and you'll already have that resource there to be able to move forward with that. Also, for a lot of people that take lessons, or if you are in one of these cold climates where you're not able to do a whole lot of riding right now, this is really good because it gives you something to focus on and to keep improving. We have some unmounted exercises, and we have just a lot of the study portions that you can do with that time that maybe you would have been at the barn, or you'll be at the barn later in the year. Now you can devote it to being able to go through and do this study and use that time really effectively. So even if you're not riding, you're still making progress and you're building specifically this knowledge area of these different components of confidence. So the balanced riding course is not going to be a good fit if you're a really advanced rider that has big performance goals. You're riding at a high level in competition, or if you're really experienced in behavioral science, then this course is going to be more of a review than new information. Also, if you have decided through the goal setting process that riding is maybe not the priority right now, which is okay. If you decide that the riding is not a priority, that really the area you need to focus on in order to help move your riding forward is thinking about maybe increasing your career so you have more financial resources available, then this isn't going to be the best fit right now. Focus on that. We'll be here later on and come back when you're ready to move forward then. So what the balanced riding course is, it's an 8-week program. There's 6 weeks of content, 6 lessons of content, and then we have 2 breaks built in. We do a Q&A call. This year, I'm going to structure the Q&A calls a little bit differently. So we're starting off with a call, and then I'm going to let you go through the program, and then we're going to have the calls starting towards the tail end of the program. The benefit of this is that it will give you an opportunity to work through it slowly, to develop your questions, and then we'll be able to work together later on in the year when not only have you gone through more of the content, so you have more of a chance to kind of think of those questions and allow those questions to develop as you're starting out applying it with your horse. But it'll also, for those of you that are in places where you're not riding a lot right now, it'll give you the opportunity to be asking those questions when you're actually out riding. The balanced riding course also includes a workbook. So we send a shipped book. This gives you another method of learning. So as you're going through and you're watching the videos in the course, you can also go through the workbook and really apply the different pieces of what you're learning directly to you, and if you have a horse, to your horse. So there's a bunch of other goodies that get shipped when we send that workbook. What we're doing right now, because of the beginning of the year and just coming out of this goal setting program, is I've teamed up with Jenna Knudsen, who's the developer of the Smart Equestrian Planner. This is a really fun resource. This is actually my own planner that I brought in because it has the whole year. It's, a daily planner. If you keep a planner, this can be your planner day to day, but it has the pieces in here specifically for riders, for your riding goals, what you worked on with your horse. It also has a little space for daily gratitude and reflection notes at the end of the week that I think is really powerful, and it corresponds perfectly with what we've been doing in the goal setting workshop, because it brings in those elements of the why and of keeping you thinking about your positive news stories and connected to the importance of why you're doing this. The other thing that we're including is when you get the balanced riding course, you also get access to training journals. So training journals is the program I mentioned earlier. When we have horses that come in for training, I often will video their progress, and then we post that in training journals. There's also a whole host of little mini courses in all of the areas that we're in this wheel exercise. Things like equine nutrition, farrier care, horse body work, even down to little pieces of horse care like correct deworming, understanding the parasites that can affect horses, first aid. So it's a really, really rich resource in training journals, and you get access to that completely free with the balanced riding course. Training journals, to purchase a membership on its own, is $199, so $200 for the year, but it's included for free. And this time, we're also going to send all new balanced riding course members this journal. So you'll get another copy of the goal setting worksheets in here. You also get continued access to the goal setting process. And here, this journal is designed to be kind of specifically your riding and training journal. So this is where you can really make detailed notes and diagrams each day of what you're doing with your horse, what you want to do next. It's got a great resource in the back for tracking your horse's health and tracking their condition and making notes that you can see as those things change as you're training your horse, and even just keeping track of veterinary records. So you get, when you join, you get the full online program. You get the access to training journals for 1 year. You also get the workbook that comes with the course. We're including the journal, the printed version of the journal, so you have a physical copy of that, and the Smart Equestrian Planner. So my goal for you was really to support you, to set you up for moving forward in this year with the resources that you need to succeed. If the balanced riding course is a good fit for you, and if it's going to support you in your next step, which if you are wanting to work on your riding, you're wanting to work on the relationship with your horse, on a problem with your horse, I feel really confident from seeing the success of other students that have gone through the program that it can do the same for you and really help you move forward in those areas. But if you're at a different point and there's something else that you need to work on right now, we are here to, we're going to be here in the future when you're ready for this educational resources. I've loved having you as part of this goal setting workshop. And my main goal is for you to be able to move forward and to see you succeed. If I can support you in that through the balanced riding course or through the other online programs, I would love to be able to do that. But however we can support you and help you move forward now or in the future is truly our goal at CRK Training. So thank you so much for being here. We're going to have a link down below with all of the information for the balanced riding course. I'm going to go over now and tune in. Frida's barking a little bit, and tune in to our webinar specifically for the current balanced riding course members. And if you have any questions that I wasn't able to get to, or if you have any questions about the balanced riding course itself, please send an email. We'll leave a comment down below. Julia is behind the scenes here. She's going through and answering all of the questions. And you can also send me an email at crktrainingvideos@gmail.com. Happy to answer your questions and help you move forward. So thank you for being here. And I would love to have you join me in the course.